Ron sat within the shower as the hot water ran over him, meditating in deep thought while trying to cleanse his mind off any negative emotions that still lingered in hopes of being able to speak to Yori. It had been about 2 hours since everyone else had arrived at the safe zone, and Ron had been trying to contact Yori through his use of mystical monkey powers, but it hadn't been much successful. Ron's mind was still fraught with sorrow and anger and fear from everything that had happened within the last week. And he was still trying to shut Apollyon out of his mind. While Ron had been able to hold back Apollyon's influence for some time, he could only slowly feel that barrier in his mind beginning to weaken. And this was something Ron didn't want. He had already seen the horrible things that the Red Rage could do to him and others, and the thought of losing control again like he did in Japan made Ron shiver fearfully. "Yori, where are you? Can you hear me?" Ron whispered in his mind. There was no response, only silence. Ron focused harder and tried clearing his mind, but it wasn't easy. Every time Ron tried clearing his mind, he saw flashbacks of those zombie illusions in Japan, attempting to attack him with the burned, charred, and landscape that had once been teeming with life and civilization. Ron only saw visions of those burnt skeletons laying in the remains of what used to be Yamanochi Ninja School, now reduced to rubble and ash. No, don't think back on that, Ron fought, forcing those images out of his mind. Yori's alive. She's alive and out there somewhere. Ron focused hard on Yori in his mind, trying to keep the images of her beautiful face in thoughts. As it slowly began to work, Ron reflected some of the memories on Yori. He felt the negative emotions begin to ease, allowing him to calm his mind. Once Ron's mind was more at ease, he attempted to speak to Yori through his mystical monkey powers again. "Yori, please, speak to me," Ron fought, reaching out far beyond the safe zone of his mind. "Where are you? Can you hear my voice?" There was still no reply, so he still tried harder. Ron tapped into his mystical monkey powers even harder and focused on finding Yori's life force. It was long and difficult, taking him out of every energy within him to not lose focus. After about 5 minutes of doing this, Ron was about ready to give up when he suddenly heard a familiar voice. "Stoppable-san? Is that you?" A faint female voice called out to Ron's mind. Ron felt his heart rush with excitement upon hearing Yori's voice speaking to him. "Yori, it's you! It's really you!" Ron cried out, his mind with joy. I can't tell you how happy I am to hear your voice again. I was so afraid that you would have been killed in a nuclear blast. Where are you?" There was silence for a moment. Then she replied back with a sad voice. "I'm sorry, Stoppable-san, but Master Sensei's spirit ordered me to not reveal my current location to anyone, even you," Yori began sadly. "I'm the last surviving member of the Yamanochi Ninja clan, and it is impressive, in fact, I lived long enough to find a successor and rebuild the clan. However, if I were to reveal my location to anyone, it would not only put me in danger of me being discovered by the Black Shadow, but it would also put you and anyone else who knew in danger as well." Ron had a feeling that Yori would say that. Kim always theorized that Yori wouldn't reveal her location to him due to the danger of Black Shadow possibly getting their hands on him and torturing him for her location. However, there was one thing that Ron still didn't know. "So I take it you know about the Black Shadow?" Ron asked. "Yes, Master Sensei told me about them and their leader Ridley Farkas," Yori replied. "Because of how powerful he is, Sensei wants me to stay in hiding until Black Shadow is eliminated, and he wants nobody in the outside world to know I'm alive. If Ridley ever were to find out I survived the nuclear attack, and his organization, along with him, would hunt me down and try to kill me, and I can't let that happen, or else the Yamanochi Ninja clan will become extinct." Ron knew that Yori was right. She was the very last Yamanochi ninja on Earth, and if she were to die before finding a successor, the Yamanochi clan will be officially extinct. The thought of Yori dying horrified Ron, but there wasn't really much he could do. If she wouldn't tell him where she was, which it might have been for the best. Ron didn't know exactly where Yori was, but whatever it was, he hoped that she was safe. I understand," Ron said with a disappointed voice. "However, I still need your help with something very serious, and I don't know who else to turn to since Master Sensei is dead. Yes, and I know what it is, Yori replied. It is the Red Rage, isn't it? Ron's heart felt a jump in when he heard Yori mention Red Rage, but he wasn't too surprised. Apollyon had already told Ron that Master Sensei knew about the Red Rage, so he must have assumed Yori must have heard about it from him as well. If that were the case, maybe it was possible that Yori could help him control the Red Rage's influence. So you know about that? Ron asked. Yes, Master Sensei told me about it, Yori replied. He also agreed to allow me to train you into controlling its influence, and there is a special way that you'll be able to do it as well. How? Ron asked. I've begun mastering the power of astral form, just like Master Sensei, and I'll be using that to help me train your mind, Yori replied. I know that you're trying these times for you and your many others, but not all hope is lost. You're strong, unstoppable son, and I knew that you'll be able to overcome if you allow me to help you. Even with his eyes shut, Ron smiled warmly as the shower poured over him, and he knew for a fact that Yori was still alive and safely hidden somewhere where the Black Shadow couldn't find her. Ron felt much better knowing that he was no longer without help regarding the Red Rage, but he still feared for his own safety and the safety of those he loved, though, and Ron wanted to nothing more than to bring the Black Shadow down as possible. But he knew that it wouldn't be possible or simple. However, with Yori's help, Ron knew that he could probably grow stronger and expand his knowledge of his mystical monkey powers to the point where it'd be far more powerful than ever before. The Red Rage was still a big issue Ron had to deal with first, though. Yori, I'd be honored to let you train me, Ron replied happily, but I'll need to leave the shower first. Very well, stoppable son. I shall await your calling, Yori replied. Then her presence faded from Ron's mind. Ron opened his eyes as the psychic connection between him and Yori was broken. Then he stood up to shut off the tap. But just then, he heard someone sliding in the large shower door open. He quickly spun around to see none other than Kim entering the shower with only a towel wrapped around herself. Ron blushed as he grabbed a wash rag to cover his Niveri regions as he saw Kim stepping in. I didn't know you were, Ron started, but stopped when he noticed how distressed Kim looked. She was visibly upset and even removed the towel, giving Ron a full view of her body. This was the first time he had ever seen Kim without clothes on, and it would have excited him if it weren't for the fact that she looked so upset. Kim, what's going on? You look so upset, Ron asked in concern. There was silence for a moment, then spoke in a distressed voice. Wade's mother was killed an hour ago, Kim replied as she approached Ron. Dr. Director told me that the Black Shadow bombed his house and he and his mother were leaving to head to the safe zone. One of those fires attacked Global Justice was to blame. Wade and his father got away safely, but his mother was still inside the house when it got hit. Ron felt his heart skip a beat and sink upon hearing that. For a moment, he felt the Red Rage steering within him. However, Ron fought the anger and tried his best to calm himself by reassuring himself that everything would be fine, and in that Wade was at least safe and Yori was still alive. But the fact Black Shadow had attempted to yet another attack on those close to him made it difficult to contain his inner anger. Those bastards, Ron cursed angrily. They're not going to stop until they've wiped us out and our friends out. Do you know if Wade's hurt? No, he's fine, Kim replied, wiping the tears off her face. Wade arrived just as you were entering the shower about 20 minutes ago, but he's a real emotional mess right now. Me and the others have been comforting him since then. Well, that's good to know, Ron said sadly. I can't imagine what he must have been going through right now, but I'll gladly help him out any way I can. Did he manage to save our battle suits? Yes, he has them in his quarters for us. Wade also managed to save most of his technical gear before his house was hit. So that's good, at least, Kim replied. She then approached Ron and leaned in towards his chest, her bare skin feeling the smooth end wet against his. Ron began to grow excited over this, but still felt a deep sense of regret for Wade. Ridley clearly knew no bounds when it come to inflicting pain and suffering, and when he had just robbed Wade of his mother, his father, Lord Turian, was the only parent he had left. Ron stammered, trying to move away, but Kim grabbed his side and pulled him closer to her while tossing the rag Ron had held onto him. "Please don't go," she begged in a soft voice, yet sad. I can't take it anymore. I know I've tried to stay as positive about this as I can, but truth to be told, everything that's happened is tearing me apart. And what's worse, I've been so worried about you ever since the Red Rage took a control over you. When Wade told me about what happened to you in Japan, I was terrified." Kim embraced Ron and leaned over her head against his shoulder. I don't want to lose you, Ron. I love you," she whispered. Ron then felt his heart pounding as Kim embraced him under the shower, water pouring over him. He loved Kim as well, more than anyone could ever imagine. He vowed to not let Ridley touch her. Ron also felt something else as well as he embraced Kim. It was desire, a certain desire he's ever had. While he always had entertained the idea of one day marrying Kim and starting a family, Ron hadn't fully considered doing it for real, but made up his mind. Ron loved Kim, and Kim loved him, and they would never leave each other's side. I love you too, Kim," Ron replied. "I won't let Black Shadow harm you, and that's a promise. I'll do anything in my power to protect you no matter what happens." "I know you will," Kim said as she felt Ron's heart pounding against his chest. "Please, What is it?" Ron asked. "Ron," Kim said, looking at him with his eyes. I want you to make love to me right here. I know it's what you want, and I want it too. I don't care if I get pregnant. I want two of us to be together forever, to raise a family, even if it means having to live underground forever." Ron couldn't deny this one bit, but he knew he was feeling really the desire. He knew that he wanted Kim right here and right now. While the idea of raising a family right now seemed risky because of Ridley and his organization haunting him, Ron didn't care. He'd protect Kim and those he loved, even if it meant living under the safe zone forever, with Lloyd and Nelson watching over them. "Kim," Ron said with a warm smile, "you know I could never refuse an offer like that." Kim's green eyes lit up with joy as she pulled Ron over into a deep, passionate kiss. The two of them soon began making love to each other, and it felt amazing beyond anyone's belief. Ron and Kim felt their sorrows and pain vanish as they made love in the shower and lost themselves in passion. "You stupid fool!" Ridley roared angrily as his holo communicator. "Why did you let him get away?" "I tried taking him and his family out. I really did. But the vehicle he and his father escaped in had a cloaking device and allowed them to..." Foss began. "Silence! I don't want any excuses!" Ridley yelled, pounding his fist against the desk. "You had one job, and it was to eliminate Wade, and yet you call me the report that only his mother was killed in the blast?" "With all due respect, my lord, I did try to," Foss replied calmly. "But halfway down the road, the vehicle activated some sort of cloaking device, and I lost it. It wasn't my fault that they got away. How was I supposed to know they had a cloaking device?" Ridley wanted to protest, but he had to admit Foss did have a point. There was no way or not of ever know that the USV had a cloaking device on it or not, but the fact that Wade escaped made Ridley really angry. Wade was the brains of Team Possible, and with him still alive, this meant that they still have more advantages over Black Shadow. If Wade were to be erased from the world, Team Possible would be weaker than before, while global justice will still be helping them. They wouldn't be as strong as they were before, as this is why Ridley wanted Wade gone. Be as it may, I want Wade hunted down and eliminated. I don't care if you have to search all of Middleton or this whole damn planet. Just find him, Ridley snapped coldly. "Yes, Lord Ridley," Foss replied. "However, my fighter is low on power and I'll need to refresh some power cells soon. I've been out here for at least 5 hours. Ridley grumbled in annoyance, then said, "Return to base and restock it, but afterwards, I want all of Middleton's search for that brat. That's an order." "Yes, my lord," Foss replied, then signed off. Ridley stood up and kicked the side of his desk in anger. "Stupid imbecile!" Ridley growled. "Wade and his father were right there, and Foss lets them escape? If he had used his damn brain, he would have destroyed Wade, and if he had the chance. That fucking idiot better give me the results later on, or there's going to be trouble for sure." Sighing in frustration, Ridley walked over to the window of his personal quarters, gazed out of the main hangar bay where all the fighter shuttles and various assault vehicles were parked. Tons of his fellow members and worker bots were attending to them, ensuring that they were functioning at their full performance. Everything was in order just like how Ridley wanted, and whatever something like this Faust's blunder disrupted was in order. It deeply angered him. If Black Shadow was to one day rule this world, it must be maintained, and if it's the smallest mistakes could have dire consequences, Ridley thought as he gazed upon the underworld empire and he commanded. There was nothing more Ridley desired than to one day restore Black Shadow to its former glory, come out of hiding and reveal himself to the world. However, in order to ensure that no heroes could oppose him, Ridley needed them all wiped out. He would start off first with Team Possible and their families, then he eliminated any and all other forces that deemed to have raised threat in his rise of power. Ridley also remembered Chico and Draken, then clenched his fist upon remembering the report that he had gotten earlier that his assailants, that Chico and Draken, managed to escape their home. A few of Ridley's men had been killed in the process by Shigo, who managed to fight them off with her superpowers. But until she received injuries in the process, after briefly chasing Draken and Shigo into a forest, they eventually escaped their line out of sight. This greatly angered Ridley, and he punished them for their failure by putting a bullet through their heads. Ridley wouldn't tolerate failure, and those who failed him would pay the price for their lives. Had Faust not been in the second in command, Ridley would have most likely killed him, or for failing to kill Wade. There are no room for mistakes in my organization. Failure means death in the ranks of Black Shadow, Ridley thought coldly. I may have to punish Faust in the future if he makes any more mistakes like that. The longer Team Possible remains out in the large, the more my organization runs the risk of being revealed to the world. Ridley had already planned to officially eliminate Kim Possible and Ron Stoppable in the most twisted way as possible. Only it wouldn't be in his own hands or in the hands of his organization. Ridley had formed a possibility of a sinister plan that concorded with his and eliminated them. But there were a few loose ends that had to be tied up first, before he could set that plan into motion. The main issue was locating Kim and Ron with their families and relatives who suddenly gone missing. Ridley had recently been told by someone of his informers that global justice had been moved them to the safe zone, somewhere where Ridley had no knowledge of this. His informers also didn't know the location of the safe zone either, only that it was somewhere Black Shadow was only unable to location due to the fact of being hidden so well. Ridley had contacted most of his informers as he could, hoping they had some clue as to where Kim and Ron were located, but they had no answers. Ridley began ordering his informers to search all of Middleton for Kim and Ron and all of their families and relatives. But they had no luck, and when Ridley ordered his other fractions all over the various of the globes to search for them, they couldn't find them either. It's if they vanish off the face of the earth. Just where are you two? Ridley murmured in frustration. Despite the fact that they were hiding, Ridley knew that they couldn't stay hidden forever, and at some point they resurface, and once they did, Ridley and his organization would hunt them down on intact of his secret plan. The world was already enough turmoil and panic after the nuclear attack he had unleashed upon Japan, and Ridley figured that this would make things easier for him. He was pretty sure that Kim and Ron would be tasked by global justice to help attend to the survivors that managed to escape the nuclear blast, yet the fallout radiation that lingered afterwards had been claiming many lives of those since the aftermath of the explosion. Japanese citizens had been evacuating the island for the last several days, ever since the airborne radiation had reached its dangerous levels, and many ended up being affected by it. Ridley hadn't been watching the news each day, and when he witnessed tensions between US, China, and Russia had been rising due to them blaming each other for all the nuclear attack. The United States had suspected that China or Russia had been responsible for the nuclear bombing of Japan, since the bomber couldn't be identified. Spy satellites had captured an image of Ridley's fighter from Earth's atmosphere, but no one could identify it, since it was false signals emitters from Ridley's fighter shuttle that made it look like a normal aircraft, which confused anyone who saw it. The nuclear missile Ridley had used on Japan, so it had the same false signal imitators, installing it to which it also made it untraceable. Like the fighter shuttle, causing the US, China, and Russia to blame each other for the attack. Millions were dead, and millions were more becoming sick from the fallout radiation that spreads throughout the rest of Japan from the blast. Even with the radiation scrubbing technology, it was estimated the fallout radiations would be unsafe at the levels for the next several months, meaning that many Japanese citizens would be forced to leave their homes and evacuate the island until the radiations were low enough. Ridley was quite pleased with such a result, but such simply the appetizer. The main course was yet still to come, and by that initially his grand plan, and was to eliminate the two best heroes on the planet. You can't hide underground forever, and when the both of you return to the surface, I will know about it. You can't hide from my informers. No one can, Ridley said out loud as he gazed at the workers going about their business. I will find you both and your families and wipe this planet clean of your existence. Your family tree will cease to exist once I'm through with you, and no more heroes will be left to oppose me and my organization. So enjoy your time while it lasts. Ridley then turned away from the window, sneering evilly at the thought of finally ridding the world of Team Possible, and it would be the hands of someone that would at least expect. Night had fallen by the time Wade and his father arrived at the safe zone. He was still very shaken up by the sudden death of his mother at the hands of Black Shadow, as well as filled with grief and sorrow. He had locked himself away in his guest room and was silent for hours. Wade couldn't even let Kim or Ron enter the room, nor he would let his father into the room. But of course, everyone figured that leaving Wade alone to grief was probably the best thing for him right now, since it would help him calm down. It had been 2 hours since Kim and Ron left the shower, finally giving up their innocences to each other, and they have both returned to their quarters to rest up. Rufus was snoozing on the beside table next to the bunk bed, as Ron and Kim lay in the bottom bunk beds in bathrobes, checking the news for anything regarding the nuclear attack on Japan. And just as they guessed it, there were several news stories going on about the current situation in Japan at that moment. Hundreds and hundreds of Japanese citizens were being evacuated from the Kyushu region due to the high levels of airborne radiation spreading across the island. Most of the Japanese government had been completely wiped out from the blast, leaving most of Japan in a shell of its former self. Millions were dead and thousands were even being infected by the radiation that lingered the air. The U.S. government had sent several U.S. military hospital ships over to Japan with medical supplies to treat the infected, as well as assist with the evacuation. Radiation scrubber drones had also been deployed to try and cleanse the island as much radiation as possible, but this didn't help decrease the number of people being infected with the radiation that still lingered in the air. Ron began to worry about Yori and even wondered if the radiation might reach her location. Ron had no idea where Yori's hiding place was, but if it were above ground, he was pretty sure that the radiation might reach it. But as Ron thought more about it, he figured that Yori probably wouldn't take such a risk. And he was also pretty sure that Sensei wouldn't send Yori to a place where there'd be a chance that the airborne radiation could reach her and affect her. But this put Ron's mind at ease, and he was still worried about what would become of Japan and its citizens. From what the news reporter described, it would take at least 18 months for the radiation levels to drop at a safe level in order for the island to sustain a life again. Radiation scrubber drones would continue their work, cleansing the island until it was time to ensure that life would continue after 18 months. It was estimated that about 13 million people were killed by the nuclear blast, and only about 9 million Japanese citizens had survived it, but thousands of them continued to die each day from radiation poisoning. Most of the evacuating citizens were being immigrated over to the United States, while some choose to migrate to Europe and other parts of the world, but others weren't so lucky. The unlucky ones were either too sick to be safely migrated, or they just simply couldn't for other reasons. Dr. Director had recently contacted both Kim and Ron and told them that they would be assisting Global Justice the next day, helping with the evacuations over in Japan, as the U.S. government had requested the help of Global Justice to assist the military with helping the sick and injured. They hadn't been notified about the Black Shadow, however, due to Dr. Director's fear of the fact that there could be informers amongst the government, so the feds were left in the dark in that one alone. This was surely a dark time for not just Japan, but for the rest of the world as well. Global paranoia and fear had struck everyone around the world, wondering who could be attacked next. This is just madness, KP. Almost every government on this planet is at each other's throats. They don't even know the truth, Ron said, shaking his head. Well, it's not like they believe us even if Dr. Director allow us to tell them, Kim replied. We don't really have real evidence to confirm it was Black Shadow. And even with the flash drive and the stuff, it still doesn't prove that Ridley was behind the attack. So the whole world thinks he's dead, remember? I know, Ron said bitterly. And that's why Ridley's able to get away with his crimes so easily. Not only that, but he has also informers everywhere around the world, and we don't know who they are. That flash drive didn't have any info on the informers. Gemini was the only one who knew about the informers, but he was killed before he could be trialed or interrogated even further. So there's no real way of knowing who the real informers are. I honestly don't know how we're going to stop Ridley and his organization, KP. How are we supposed to do that when he's practically a ghost to the public? We don't even know where his hideout is. I honestly don't know, Ron, Kim said with a frown. I'm completely in the dark too with this one. Gemini was the only one who could have helped us out further. Ron then looked down, feeling hopeless, not knowing what to do. He had seen a photo of Ridley's mugshot in the dark web files on the flash drive, so Ron knew at least that he looked like, and Kim saw it all. Of course, this wouldn't help them much since it was plainly obvious that Ridley didn't show himself in the public without the risk of being discovered. That made Ron wonder if anyone would recognize Ridley, since he's pretty much erased every record of existence to the public. Ridley didn't even look that much different from what he did years ago. He did escape from prison, and that was when Ron speculated that Ridley was too afraid to show himself, without the possibility of someone who had been surfacing the dark web to recognize him. Ridley certainly seems a cautious individual. That seems to be much clearer, Ron thought. It's most likely the informers that gave him all the info he wants. But Ridley's the one who actually did the bombing? That was the big question that both Kim and Ron had. There was certainly no way to know if Ridley himself was the one who did it. And as the news also reported, the aircraft suspected to have a launcher nuclear missile that couldn't be identified since there was a heavy hidden in the clouds, and it also vanished from the site seconds after the missile was launched. No one knew where the attacker was or who it was, but every government around the world was acting crazy just to find out who's been behind this genocidal act. Ron and Kim had no doubt that Ridley's informers would have worked with him to try to keep him from finding out. The Black Shadow seemed content enough on manipulating the world in the shadows. This reminded Ron of the Star Wars universe and how Sith had manipulated the Republic from the shadows, allowing them to finally eliminate the Jedi over the political gain and manipulation. It appeared that Ridley was using a very similar tactics, although slightly different, yet almost still the same. And as far as the world is concerned, Black Shadow is gone. Ridley is dead, Ron thought darkly, but me, Kim, Dr. Director, and only a selected few within Global Justice knew the truth and that Ridley's still alive. And not only that, his organization is far more bigger and powerful than ever. He's been operating underground and in the shadows ever since he escaped from prison. And now Black Shadow's in so large that his factions are all over the world. God knows where Ridley's actual hideout is. We have no clue where it is, and neither does Dr. Director. The flash drive didn't have anything on that. Ron, you alright? Kim asked, noticing Ron's distress. It's the Black Shadow, Ron replied, glancing over at Kim with a concerned look. Only you, me, our families, friends, and Dr. Director knows about them. And yet we can't even reveal anything about Ridley to the authorities without the risk of his informers finding out. We don't know who we can trust, and we don't even know where he's hiding. I know, Ron, Kim said sadly, but we'll find a way. And maybe with your training with Yori might help us grow stronger to the point where you might be able to use your mystical monkey powers to help us find him. I don't know if they're capable of doing that, but hopefully I might learn some technique that will help us find Ridley, Ron replied back, laying on his bed. That is just crazy, Kim. In this just 1 week, the whole world's gone to hell, and it's only gotten worse. First Japan, then the Red Rage, and now we have to leave our homes because of Ridley wanting to wipe us out? I don't know what to do, KP. What if we never find Ridley? What if he chooses to nuke Middleton next? Kim honestly don't know how to protest against this. The Black Shadow had already proven to be powerful and dangerous as they were. And if they were willing to nuke Japan, who was to say that they wouldn't do the same for Middleton to try and wipe out Team Possible? I've been thinking a lot about that, and I honestly wouldn't doubt it, Kim replied, sounding a bit worried. I've been thinking a lot about what you told me earlier that day, about Ridley wiping out a powerful group organizations so that he could take over the world at some point in the future. I can't deny that being the possibility any longer. After seeing what happened in Japan, it's very clear that Ridley would do anything to get what he wants, and it really terrifies me of what he's capable of. Same here, KP, Ron replied, embracing Kim. And what terrifies me even more is the Red Rage. I'm really afraid that I'll lose control again. And if I face another threat force out there, after what happened to me in Japan, I've been so afraid just thinking about fighting crime again. Kim embraced Ron as well and then said, Ron, you're a very strong person. Stronger than you know. I have faith that you will be able to control it. And Yori will be able to help you as well. Yeah, she told me that she could start training me tomorrow on Saturday. Ron replied, I'm going to get control of myself and try not to let the rage take over. Not like last time. Kim smiled and then said, I'm confident that you will, and I'll help you as well. Thanks, Kim. That really means a lot to me, Ron said with a blush. It's only because I love you so much, Kim replied with a smirk, then glanced over at the locked door. You know, we could continue where we left off earlier, if you know what I mean. Ron smirked and said, Oh, I'd love to do that. Kim then slid her bathrobe off, revealing her body as Ron did the same. I'm all yours, darling, Kim teased. Then the two began to make passionate love again with each other as the hours ticked away. Midnight had arrived by the time Faust had called Ridley again, and he didn't have the best of news. Well, any sign of Wade or his other friends? Ridley asked, over him on the hollow communicator on his desk. Me and my men have searched everywhere in Middleton, and I had cloaked spy drones scanning the planet for orbit for any signs of Wade or Team Possible, and we found nothing, Faust reported regrettably. Ridley was visibly frustrated and angry upon hearing the news. He then shook his head. Return to the base for the night and rest up, Ridley finally said in a defeated tone. But tomorrow, I want you all out there looking for Team Possible and her friends and families. I want them found, but not eliminated. I need them alive in order for my plan to work. Yes, my lord, Faust replied, then signed off. Ridley shook his head again. Just then, he looked. Just where the hell are you, Team Possible? The crime lord then paced around his quarters, pondering his thoughts for a first time in a while. Ridley felt defeated. He had never lost prey like this before, not when he particularly had a legion of informers and factions of his gang all over around the globe, with his eyes and ears open at every turn, and with the Laudorian technology in their hands. It made tracking Ridley's targets them a lot more easier, not to mention the fact that it also made spying easier as well. I should be able to find them so easily, and yet how in God's name did they just disappear like that? Where did they just go to avoid detection so easily? Even my informers within Global Justice don't have a clue on where they are and where they're taken. All they know is where could they go into hiding, but where? Ridley murmured softly. He gazed out his window again, trying to figure something out, anything to get them to emerge from wherever he was hiding. I'll have to flush them out of hiding somehow, but how to do it, Ridley thought, pacing back and forth near a window. He thought of a few ways he could force Team Possible to come out of hiding, but some of them were not the best choices. Ridley had briefly considered choosing another target to blast with nuclear missiles, but quickly decided against it, since he already done that to Japan and caused enough chaos, so he had to think of something else. After doing a bit of thinking, Ridley came up with a very sinister idea that would undoubtedly attract more attention of Team Possible. Yes, I know what will get them out of hiding, Ridley sneered. Then he walked over to his desk and tapped in the hollow communicator. Faust, this is Ridley. Respond. Faust's face appeared on the hollow communicator and then asked, Yes, Lord Ridley? Once you have returned to the base, meet me in my quarters. I figured out a way how to lure Team Possible out of hiding. But I will need your help, Ridley informed. It would be an honor, my lord. Faust out, Faust replied. Then Ridley switched off the device. Ridley grinned with delight upon imagining how his wicked plan would unfold. Although Team Possible and their families were hidden away from sight, this didn't mean that all those they were safe. Ridley knew one person that would catch Team Possible's attention. Ridley tapped in a few keys in his holo computer, then a holographic image of Bonnie Rottweiler appeared on his holo projector. I hear you're quite a brat when you want to be, and you were no good terms with Kim Possible and her boyfriend. But I wonder just how much you're truly value of life. Well, I'll put that to the test tomorrow, and we'll see if they just take the bait, Ridley said with an evil grin. Oh, Bonnie, I'm gonna have so much fun with you.